Because the Battle of Marathon took place in 490 BC, the details surrounding it are a bit blurry, but the most popular version of it goes as such. After the Greeks routed the Persians on land in Marathon, they retreated back to their ships to attack Athens directly. With the Persian ships on their horizon, the Athenians would have assumed total loss in Marathon and were planning to burn their own city to the ground to avoid it being taken by the enemy. So the Greeks sent a messenger, Phidippides, to run from Marathon back to Athens to convey the message before it was too late. He ran through the midday Greek heat, shedding any weight he could, and eventually even all of his clothes to try to make it back to Athens as swiftly as possible. He used every last fiber of his being to push through the pain, and after finally reaching Athens on the 26-mile journey, he declared, "We've won," and died on the spot. We've built a worldwide tradition of running this same distance just to flex on a dead guy so that we can accomplish his life's great task and then go back to work the next day. Of course, it's just a legend that is really a conflation of two other stories, but seriously, it's equal parts beautiful and absurd. Beautiful in the fact that humans are able to dedicate so much time and effort to push their bodies and minds to the absolute limit just to accomplish a completely arbitrary goal just because they want to. Absurd because there's no point to any of this. The myth is fake. The distance ran isn't even the actual distance between Marathon and Athens. Nothing of value is created by running a marathon, but hundreds of thousands of people still do it all across the world every single year. Why? There's two stories I want to tell. One is about my attempt to run the Philadelphia Marathon, and the other is about my attempt to reach Master in TFT. First, let's talk about the marathon. I've always hated running, and I still kinda do. But a few months into the pandemic, I was getting a little stir crazy and needed an excuse to get out of the house. So in July of 2020, I started running, and I could absolutely feel all those years of not exercising regularly and being a full-time content creator in every single belabored, breathless step. But I did it, and I kept on doing it every few days or so. What helped me keep the commitment to running, unlike I had been able to do with any form of exercise before, was the lack of an easy escape. When you're a mile away from home and want to stop exercising, the fastest way to accomplish that is to run as fast as possible back. What also kept me hooked on running is seeing the gradual improvement of racing against yourself. I easily fall in the habit of comparing myself to others, and feeling waves of disappointment whenever it feels like I'm not keeping up with my peers or not where I'm supposed to be in life. But those feelings don't pierce my mental when it comes to running. The only person I ever find it important to compare myself against is myself. And seeing my times improving and my body having the endurance to handle longer and longer runs gave me a sense of fulfillment and confidence in both my mind and body that I hadn't felt in a very long time. This alone sustained my habit until around January of 2021, where my consistent running schedule completely fell off. The streak had been broken, and I needed something new to work towards to get me back in my running shoes. So being the overly confident and overly ambitious person I am, I signed up to run a full marathon in November of that same year, with my longest run up to that point being less than 7 miles. But it was April, and November was a long ways away. So even the looming threat of 26.2 miles on the horizon wasn't enough to motivate me to get back on track with this habit. You'll get a lot of different answers on how far out you should be training for a marathon, but usually the answer is between 12 and 20 weeks. So let's overlay the weekly mileage I ran in preparation with one of the many generic 12-week plans you can find online. That's worse than expected, but still not too awful. I had no delusions of completing with a top time and was just looking to make it to the finish line, so about half the amount of miles I needed wasn't too bad at all. The only issue here is that isn't actually the miles expected to prepare for a full marathon. That's only for a half. Here are the expected miles for marathon training. So for a full marathon, I had done about a quarter of the miles I was supposed to. I knew I was underprepared, but I didn't know just how underprepared I was at the time. And I still woke up on November 21st to run the Philadelphia Marathon.
All right, this is Scott before the marathon. What do you have to say?
I hope I survive.
Why would you just say that to me?
Now, let's talk about TFT. Teamfight Tactics, or TFT for short, is an 8-player free-for-all strategy game. Each player sets up a board of characters that fights against another player's board of characters. Every player starts with 100 health and loses some every time their board loses a fight. The game ends when only one player has health remaining. Finishing top 4 in a lobby is considered a win and will move a player up the leaderboards. Any placement 5th through 8th is considered a loss. The amount of points a player will move up and down the leaderboard changes based on placement. Generally, a first place performance nets a player player 40 LP, a 5th place performance loses a player 10 LP, and so on and so forth. Rather than just exclusively use LP or points that show how good a player is, the leaderboard is divided into 9 tiers, of which most of these tiers are split into 4 divisions. For example, to get out of the lowest possible tier in division, Iron 4, a player would need 100 LP to make it into Iron 3, and then an additional 300 LP after that to make it into the next tier, Bronze 4. Most of TFT's player base ends in the Platinum tier or below, and getting beyond that without some dedicated effort is difficult for most players. By reaching the tier above that, Diamond 4, the player has cemented themselves as the top 6% of the player base, making them about the 50,000th best player on the North American server. The climb up from Diamond 4 to Master, the first tier that isn't split into further divisions, is where the difficulty ramps up exponentially. This last 400 LP divides the 50,000th best player from the 5,000th best player, and is where players start playing much closer to optimal play, which allows much less room for mistakes. But once a player crosses the threshold into Master and gets that 400th point, they can't be demoted back down to Diamond 1. But if you make it all the way up to Diamond 1 99 LP, and you can't close out that last game, you can lose hundreds of games worth of progress and run your rank all the way back down to the rank floor of Diamond 4 0 LP. And I know this because 2 seasons ago I did exactly that. I made it all the way up to Diamond 1 93 LP, 1 game away from reaching Master, and I lost it all the way back down. I played an absolutely insane nearly 600 games that set trying to reach the peak of Master, which isn't even close to making me one of the best TFT players in North America, and I couldn't overcome what I lacked. The disappointment I felt putting all that time into failing at a goal that I should have easily been able to achieve absolutely crushed me. It made me start to question what's the point of putting all this time and effort into something that's essentially meaningless. But time eventually healed my bruised ego enough and hid these intrusive thoughts deep enough in my brain to give the climb to Masters another shot when Set 7.5 released in early September. My resolve to follow through with this goal I had set out to achieve never wavered at the start of race day. The max time allowed to finish was 7 hours, which works out to about a 16-minute per mile pace. My average running speed on my practice runs was way below this threshold, and I could easily walk this pace if my body couldn't handle running at the later stages of the race. This meant today's race was largely a mental battle to stick it out. My body giving out on me was a possibility for sure, but I filed that away in my head as something that was completely out of my control. And just like that, the race began. The Philadelphia Marathon was my first serious race, and feeling the energy of the crowds of spectators was electrifying, amplified even further by the pandemic, making it been about a year or so since I've been surrounded by this many people. There's something indescriptively magic of just being around other human beings that I didn't know was a feeling I craved until not being allowed to have it anymore. This showed as my first mile pace rang out of my earbuds, 8:18. My plan was to aim to stay around a 10-minute mile pace, which would put me around about 4 hours and 30-minute time to finish. But this was the best case scenario, and my more realistic aim, beyond just finishing the race of course, was finishing under 5 hours, which required about 11:27 per mile pace. Doing some mental math, I knew I should slow my pace down a bit, because this speed was not sustainable for the full 26. But when you're winning, it's hard to imagine losing again, and my pace only slowed to 8:47 for the second mile, and kept around that with a 8:52 for the third mile. To be honest, this goal of reaching Master wasn't on my mind from the start. It was more like one of those soft goals you set for yourself at the beginning of the year, like saying you're going to read more or fix your sleep schedule. You do want these things, but you don't want to tie too much of it to your being because the likelihood of you failing at them is pretty high. With all the time I'd put in the previous sets of TFT, I was able to sprint my way to Diamond 4 in just 30 games without too much resistance, putting me face to face with my 400 LP mountain for the 4th set in a row. Early on in sets, these fundamentals carry you a whole lot more as even the top players' play hasn't been optimized yet, and players are punished less for mistakes. This, alongside with my naturally conservative playstyle, allowed me to string together largely 3rd and 4th place finishes to climb to Diamond 3. Then I had a dominant string of 5 games, with 3 first place finishes that jumped me to almost halfway through the second to last tier, Diamond 2, in half the games it took me to climb that first 100 LP. I couldn't keep this momentum and experienced my first demotion of the season to Diamond 3 that was short-lived as my switch to a high-risk, high-reward playstyle gave me more firsts than 6, pushing my highest peak of the season to Diamond 2 80 LP. That Sunday binge of TFT ended futilely with no real change coming despite the number of games being played. The next week marked a disaster as the new patch dropped on the 21st and I could not get a handle on the new meta. I stabilized back up to Diamond 3 and almost climbed out, but then a string of 3 8s in a row slowed my momentum back down to a standstill. But whatever magic that had propelled me to a little over 100 points from reaching my goal just a week ago was gone. I ran it down pretty much back to where I started by the 29th of September, already more than 100 games into the set with nothing to show for it. Around the 3-mile mark, the crowds start to thin slightly, as do the racers, as they settle into their paces. This combination is brought to my attention as I get thrown off a bit as I hear a "Let's go Scott" through my headphones as I run by a crowd of people. I had a few friends waiting for me at spots along the race to cheer me on, but I didn't expect anyone this early. A bit of literal navel gazing as opposed to the mental type that I'm more accustomed to reminded me that my name is printed in bright bold letters right on my bib. It took a few occurrences of it to get used to, but these words of affirmation helped as a tourniquet to stop my pace from bleeding out all the way to a pace above the 10-minute mark at mile 4. And this all stayed much of the same throughout the 5th and 6th miles as we ran from Old City to Center City in Philadelphia, with the crowds packed tightly to these streets of varying sizes. With running being a very solitary thing for me, I wrote off the whole asking people to come cheer me on in my mind, because I thought, why would I ask people to stand out in the cold to see me for just 30 seconds? But sometimes other people know you better than you know yourself, and seeing my 2 friends stationed around the mile 6 and mile 7 markers reinvigorated that energy that had started to wane from the beginning of the race.
Oh my god.
You're doing great!
But as we got further away from the city proper, these crowds thinned yet again as our race paces became more and more apparent. Miles 8, 9, and 10 are the only points in the race that felt like a normal long run to me. The similar environment to my usual paths and the knowledge that the next time I'd see someone I knew would be at the finish line put me back in the solitary happy place I've come to love on runs like these. I knew I had wasted 100 games worth of time accomplishing nothing beyond reinforcing my intrusive thoughts that I wasn't good enough. It's overdramatic to express it this way, I know, but this to me is the beauty of competition. It allows you to explore yourself in a much more raw way than any type of self-reflection can. How do you handle the crushing weight of disappointing yourself? Fuck! Are you humble enough in your victories? GG easy. Competition allows you to explore yourself in a middle space where the emotions feel real, but the results don't have greater effects on your life. And I knew as much as I wanted to wave the white flag and give up on this set, I would never be satisfied until I reached Master at least once. But my competitive urges were waning, and I needed something else to trick me to keep running up that hill. So the idea of this project was birthed, and I began recording every game I played. This marks the point where reaching Master stopped being a goal and instead became an obsession. 5 games on the first day recording. 12 games the day after that, 10 games the day after that, and 8 games the day after that. And all this was just to make it back up to Diamond 3, which I lost 1 day later, and then proceeded to run it all the way back down to Bedrock. Diamond 4 0 LP. Something isn't working. Around mile 11, it started to hit me that the race wasn't even halfway over. Coming into the race, of course you know it's 26.2 miles, and that number stays bouncing around in your brain. But the complete understanding of what that amount means doesn't come until you're in the thick of it. And here, in mile 11, is where the race truly became a mental one for me. The realization that I still have more miles left to run than I've already run shakes me so much that my mile pace drops by a full minute and a half. Seeing my pace drop dramatically knocked some sense back into me, briefly getting my pace back to sub 12, but I immediately bounced back to above that margin for mile 13, cementing in my mind that this is the new normal and I have to get used to it. Something I've neglected to mention is that throughout the run, I've been listening to music to keep me going. I queued only one song at the starting line and then let shuffle take the wheel on this enormous playlist. And by some mystical force, songs were coming in the perfect order that I hadn't skipped a single one up to this point. And quite frankly, I don't have any distinct memories of what songs I heard throughout the race, besides one. A little after the halfway mark, Happiness by Taylor Swift came on. The song is a slow, peaceful funeral dirge for a lost relationship that's about accepting both the good and bad about what has happened, reminding yourself that there will be joy in the future, and allowing yourself to make peace with your past to move forward. A song that so beautifully captured something I was now struggling with in the context of the race, and has always been a big emotional thorn in my side. Moving on from the past. Not forgetting or erasing, but seeing things for what they are and continuing forward as the new you. And so I began anew to run another half marathon. The TFT community is weird and insular, like most video game communities. It's arguably one of the weirdest I've been a part of, which I would say in part because the gameplay can produce mania with its high variance. One game, everything goes your way and you get a first place without trying too hard. The next game, you play perfectly and still finish 8th. My favorite thing about the community is the phrases that are parroted to cope with this cold and indifferent game that keeps us coming back for more. And one of my absolute favorites is, "It clicked." Used to describe the feeling when you're able to see exactly what you need to do every game, like you're able to see the Matrix code in real time. And after falling down into the pit of Diamond 4 0 LP enough times, it clicked for me. Let's go! Let's go! I'm dead. 3rd. Not bad. Lux is way too far up, brother. That's the 2nd place. Alright, that's fine. And we're gonna get him with the Bard and with our Chival. Ooh. Jace going all the way to the back line to kill Xayah early. That's a GG. Oh. Woo! Let's go. I am the victorious bird. Bird up, baby. In the 23 games I played to climb to my highest peak yet, Diamond 1 40 LP, just 60 points away from my goal, I only placed outside of the top 4 5 times. Although I had made mental peace with how much of the race I had ahead of me, my body was unable to forget the miles that came before. That mental peace was short-lived, as the most soul-crushing moment of the marathon was just ahead. There's a few points in the race so far where I'd run past people running on the other side of the road, coming in the opposite direction. But as you come out of the tunnel around the 16th mile, on the other side of the road sat a mile marker from mile 24. The beginning of the end. And then my brain starts turning its gears. How far will I have to run before I turn around? This sole question will refuse to leave my mind until we do. And the mental pain caused by mulling this question over and over will weigh on my anxious heart like a pebble, then a stone. And after mile of seeing runners going faster than me in the opposite direction, this question will drag me down like a boulder, tempting me to turn around and stop this stupid display of hubris on my terms. Mile 17 passes. My pace drops to a 13-minute mile. Mile 18. No end in sight. Mile 19 is coming up soon. A man is playing drums in a parking lot by himself. Fraternity brothers and sisters hand out shots and beers to runners on a bridge. The crowds build back up again, not to their size at the start of the race, but enough to make you feel like you're letting them down if you stop. And soon, distracted just enough by the bells and whistles around me, I've reached the turnaround. Mile 20. Only 6.2 miles between me and the medal. It clicked is more often used sarcastically. There are far too many choices in TFT for a line of play to work forever. Oh my god, how do you get one tapped? Fuck, man. And the same day I reached my peak at Diamond 1 57 LP, potentially one first place away from my goal, I lost 7 straight games and ended all the way down in Diamond 3. I was so scared of losing all my progress that I manifested my own downfall. And then my frustration led me to believe that all I needed was one more game to turn it around. It took 6 days and 2 more long losing streaks to completely regain some of that composure I lost from such a dramatic fall. Then came easily the most psychotic thing I did during this whole project. I began the morning of October 17th at Diamond 3 75 LP. Something was different on the day. I knew today would be the day I finally reached Master. I was only 225 points away. The rank was within my reach. Plus, I started the day with a second place that brought me back to Diamond 2, so I kept playing. 6 games later, largely trading wins and losses, I was back at the rank floor, Diamond 2 0 LP. A 5-game loss streak dropped me in danger of falling back to Diamond 4, but I swung it back with some great games, and 6 games after breaking that streak, I was back again to Diamond 2 0 LP. At this point, I had already played 16 games that day, about where I usually max out on a day of heavy TFT. But to put it in a good way, I was locked in. To put it in a bad way, something had snapped. Get fucked, idiot. Another 10 games flew by in an instant. The games I was winning were capping out mostly with 3rd place finishes, but all but one of the losses were 8ths. I was back again at Diamond 2 0 LP. Oh, great. Fucking great. You can even see my mental deterioration as these games go on, but I kept playing regardless. I was in way too deep. I ended the morning of October 18th at Diamond 2 0 LP. 37 games to gain 25 LP. What was the point of all of this? I'd like to say that finally reaching the turnaround lit a new fire in me to finish the race strong. It did give me a little fuel for mile 21, which was the first time since mile 14 where my pace sped up. But here is where the mental battle became most difficult. Even on my longest runs, I hadn't ever felt pain in my legs while out on a run. Now, my legs were on fire. While in Manayunk, I had both the crowds and the music in my earbuds to distract me from this pain. I lost the first as the crowds thinned out significantly as we pulled back out to running along the river. The second followed quickly after that as my earbuds died. For the first time the entire race, I was completely alone in my thoughts. Every doubt, every hesitation, and especially every bit of pain was now at the forefront of my mind. The photos from this part of the race showed as clear as day. I only remember two things from this part of the race. One was the few well-meaning stragglers who would call out, "Keep it up," or "You're almost there," or worst of all, "You got this, Scott." I did not want to be seen like this. Putting up my hood to hopefully convey the message that I wanted to suffer in silence, like my most primal, toxic, masculine urges told me to. Two was the people who were waiting for me at the finish line, which gave me a North Star. It wasn't the acclaim of being able to say I accomplished this larger-than-life feat that kept me going. As saccharine as it is to say, it was love that kept me going. Both these journeys let me know that as much as I don't want it to be true, I can't do it alone. Miles 22, 23, 24, and 25 were all marked with a similar pace at around 15.5 minutes per mile, a 7-minute slower pace than my first mile. But the end was in sight. I didn't gain much LP from my all-nighter, but that night, and talking to my friends about that night, finally got through my thick skull that I needed more moderation. I would be able to perform better spreading my focus across 6 games in a day instead of 30. I also learned that I should not be waiting till a loss to call it quits for the day. And just this small, simple change in perspective led me to my best string of TFT matches I have ever played. Dude, this might be a dub. Double kill? I win? Let's go. Please. It clicked. It started with a loss into Diamond 3, but my mental was much stronger now after being pushed to the brink. 2 quick ones brought me to Diamond 2, where I knew it was time to call it a day. 6 games with 2 last place finishes was a bit scary, and ending the day down LP, but it gave me a lot of information to apply to my games moving forward. The next day started with a 4th on my old reliable, then a 3rd on a late game dragon pivot, and after that, a 2nd on a hybrid build between the two, and then 1st place with Ragewing, a build that I'd struggled to make work all set, but now had finally figured out. I finished off the day with another 3rd place with that same build. And after one of only 2 flawless days I had the entire set, I was up 111 LP, sitting on the doorstep at Diamond 1 7 LP, 93 points away from my goal. I've known few joys in my life as sweet as seeing the 26-mile marker. The race doesn't end there in the view of the Philadelphia Art Museum, but with 26 miles behind you, an extra 0.2 feels like nothing. So it's not much, but I give it everything I've got left in the tank. The crowds grow to near the size of the start of the race, and for the first time in 10 miles or more, I take off sprinting. As soon as my foot crosses the threshold, my posture changes and my body finally rests. I did it. I was terrified. I could not handle running it all the way down to Diamond 4 again. I needed to shake this fear if I wanted to climb this final gap. Game 1. Squeaked out a 4th place on a similar build that had carried me through the previous 2 games. I was present enough to notice that I was beginning to force that build instead of what the game was giving me. I needed to be more open moving forward. Game 2. This new Guardian build had been bubbling up around this time, so I took my own advice and played it for the first time, in a part of the ladder that I was most stressed about doing well in. And the pieces fell into place. And with me too focused on learning the build that I didn't have time to stress, I got a 1st place. Hey, double kill, look at that. First time Guardian. Game 3. Right from the beginning, I get the tools to play a build I know really well. And this game is a disaster. I finished 7th sitting at Diamond 1 1 LP. Game 4. I like to call these free games because the way the ranking system works is that you have to lose a game at 0 LP to be demoted. So at worst, I can only lose 1 LP the next game. Wait, I got cutscenes? How low was I? What the fuck? I lost 1 LP the next game. Game 5. I contemplated calling it a day here, but that whole speech I had about moderation went right over my head. Nobody's perfect. Luckily for me, I got everything I needed this game. The build I went requires you to get very lucky, and I got very lucky and brought it to a first place finish. Let's go. Back in it. Diamond 1, 40 LP. Game 6. I start off with a solid plan, but as the game progresses, it doesn't go well, and I need to pivot to something else or I'm going to lose LP. Bing chillin'. Bing chillin'. That's fine. That's a 4th. Game 7. I get 2 of my favorite augments in the early game, making me feel very comfortable playing this one out. Oh, really? I think that's wrong. Oh, wow, that's a pretty good... Those are great Siobhan items. I feel like you want to be getting my front line. Because you need to front to back my team. GG's. Okay. I don't think that's not enough to get me master. I'm gonna be like 90 something. Oh boy. Diamond 1. 90 LP. Oh bull. Okay. Okay, just one more. Hopefully just one more. Even a 4th will get me to Masters. One more game today wouldn't hurt, right? Game 8. No nerves, no nerves, no nerves. No nerves, only gaming. Oh. Here's where we hit and turn it around. Right. Right. Okay, I need to stop doing that. I'm fucking rolling out my ass because I'm nervous. Yeah, just let it come to me. Yeah, we can do that. Oh. Just it, forehead. Okay. Cool. How am I so healthy? Ron, John, Don, I don't know what you're upset about, brother. I'm just better than you. I'm not toxic, I'm just right. Nice, dude. Ezreal's one tapping people these nights. Like, oh, this gets a little sketchy. Nice, that does so much damage. Yeah, those are like goated items for a swift shot. But I'd need like a Zaya or something. Ooh, ooh! I think I might be all right. Woo! Ezreal's, there's no way. Oh, he hits! The tracking on him. Nice! I did it. I hit master. Wow. I did it. I did it. I did it. Let's go. And I did it. After 5 sets of trying to reach master, I finally did it. I don't know. Maybe that's the whole thesis of this thing is I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm just chasing after something that'll hopefully be satisfying, and the point is just giving something a try and seeing if it works out. And if it doesn't, you can move forward with the knowledge that you gave it a try. I don't know. I'm just gonna drink my coffee and go back to work. If I didn't pay for my lack of training during the race, I certainly did see it in the days following it. Aches and pains all up and down my body. Saw stars every time I stood up and felt like I was going to pass out. And even had sensitivity to light for a bit. It was awful, and I swore vehemently I would never run a marathon again. But a half marathon? That's a different story. Well, here goes nothing.
GG's.